Okay, another little practice tip is a lot of students will play their piece from the very beginning to the very end when they're practicing. So, or like the very, start of this section to the start end of that section kind of thing. Or a lot of them will just do the whole thing like from the very beginning to the very end. Um, and you don't have to do that. That's actually not the that's not the best way I would say to practice. There's nothing wrong with just playing one bar for the entire day, um, or even just a couple bars for the entire week, or even just one bar for the entire week. There's nothing wrong with that. Because the thing is, if you play the entire piece, it's emotionally satisfying because you get to play through the entire thing, right? You get to feel that completion. So that's fine in terms of like, if you just feel like you need to do that to get that emotional satisfaction. But if you really want to master the piece, I would say you got to like really iron out the problems in the piece that you have. And so when I'm practicing a piece, when I'm trying to memorize a piece, I'm actually not, most of the time, I'm not playing um, the entire piece. I'm just playing, I'll literally just play one bar for the entire week. Um, and just, or even not even one bar, but just like one, necessarily one bar. I think in terms of bars because it makes it easier for people, but sometimes, a lot of times it's just like one motif, one little pattern, one little segment. And you just loop that tiny little segment until you get it down really, really well. And then once you've got that, um, you can move on to the next little segment. But and I think actually if you do it like that, it seems more emotionally rewarding to play from the very beginning of the piece to the very end of the piece. But actually, I would say it can be really emotionally rewarding to play just that one little segment because if you play that one little segment for the entire week, then at the end of the week, you will have that part down really well and you'll feel really good about it. Um, Whereas if you play the entire piece from the very start to the very end, then you won't have. It's kind of like the difference between like if you have like a big jug and you only have a certain amount of water, right? And you have a big jug of just to hold water, and you pour only certain amount of water that you have into that jug, and it fills the jug up a bit, and it doesn't feel as satisfying because um, it doesn't look like it's filled the whole thing, right? Whereas if you just have like, let's say you have a certain amount of water and you have like a smaller like cup or something and you fill it up and it fills it all the way to the brim, then it's like, okay, like you've mastered that part. You've completed, there's a sense of completion within that smaller win. So yeah, don't think you have to play from the very beginning to the very end when you're practicing your pieces. In fact, it's if you're trying to master the piece, that's actually probably better to practice it in smaller segments. And then once you have those smaller segments built up individually, then you go through and you play the whole piece. And then when you play the whole piece, you'll notice that certain spots you're going to hesitate or there's little problems or whatever. And then that's when you want to, really focus in on those little spots again, and then just iron those spots out, and then play the whole piece, and boom, you'll have the whole thing. But yeah, try to get away from the idea of that you have to play it from the very start to the very end, and do it more so just in small segments.